Hey everybody. So a while back, when I was trying to come up with some ideas for the What Writers Can Learn From series, someone suggested talking about Twilight, and when I saw that, I thought this is not, this is not what I want to do, because the focus of what writers can learn from is really a positive, right? So what positive things can we learn from whatever? Like what are some positive things about Bulk and Skull and Power Rangers? How do they develop? How do they grow? How do they become something more than that they were? What do we learn from Wonder Woman? What are the positive things about who Wonder Woman is as a character and her storyline that we can use in our own writing? So I decided not to do that unless I could come up with something that really brought it into focus for me. And I've been trying to come up with that because I don't want to do, this is all the reasons why you should hate Twilight, and that's not what I'm after. Instead, what I want to talk about is Lindsey Ellis. She is the former nostalgic chick. She does a lot of really insightful and amazing videos where she digs really deep into a topic and, just makes, a lot of sense about what's going on with it. She just recently came out with a video called Dear Stephanie Meyers. And Stephanie Meyers is the author of the Twilight series. And what Lindsey really focuses on is, what are the reasons why Twilight's hated so much? Why do people have such hatred for Twilight? And it's a really solid question. And Lindsey gives a lot of really great reasons why. A lot of the misogyny, this is a thing for women, the hatred of, young girls and what's made for them. One Direction is terrible because it's for young girls, or things along that line. So that's not really what I want to do, though. What I want to do is I want to talk about my own Twilight story. Why did I read Twilight? What was my takeaway from that, and hopefully give you guys an understanding of what you can learn from Twilight in a positive sense. Is the writing less than amazing? Yes. Are the characters underdeveloped in a lot of cases? Absolutely. But that's not the purpose of what I want to talk about. Because what I want to do is I want to talk about, what can we take away? Anyway, so I was in college, I was taking a children's literature class, and the professor said something that, I couldn't argue with. She said, if you want to be a good teacher, you have to read stuff that you don't like. And as soon as she said that, it's like, oh no, I've got to read Twilight. And so I got Twilight from the library. I didn't buy it. Don't worry about that. Anyway, and I made myself a deal because I started reading. I was like, oh God, this is awful. I can't keep doing this without something. So I made myself a deal, though. I turned on Netflix and I pulled up Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I said, here is, a storyline that's fun. It's got a vampire. It's got a romance in it. It's, questionable. There are some issues with Buffy and Angel. Not as many as Buffy and Spike, but we won't get into that. Anyway, so I made myself this deal that I would read as far as I could, and then I would watch an episode of Buffy. And then go back and read, and then go back and watch Buffy. And I did that. And it was slow going. Slow enough to the point where when Angel left and got his own show, I was still reading. And so I would alternate between episodes of Buffy and episodes of Angel. So I would read, watch Buffy. I would read and then watch Angel. And back and forth and back and forth. And I almost finished both shows before I got done with Twilight. And it was a positive experience for me in the sense that I did read something that I didn't want to read. I did go through that process, and I did make that happen. Was it good? No. Was it something that I needed to read to understand other readers? Absolutely. Now, that's not, again, not my focus. What I want to focus on is why I didn't enjoy Twilight, and what made it worse for me than just the fact that it was poor writing for me and poor character development. Because in a couple of spaces in the story, there is some amazing writing. And I don't really remember the details of it, but I know that at some point they go to the beach. They drive out to the West Coast beach, and they're just hanging out with a bunch of people. And Bella, for whatever reason, looks into this wave pool. And there's a wave pool, and there's all the animals and all the different things in it. And Stephanie Meyers takes the time to detail and to write and to explain about what Bella's looking at. And for me, part of it because there was so little of that kind of writing before that stood out. And I was like, where is this? Where did this come from? Why isn't this a part of the rest of the story? And because of that, it made the overall experience lesser for me. At the same time, there's the character of Jacob. Jacob. And when he comes in the middle of the story in just this little cameo bit, he's a much more interesting character. He's got some depth and some identity to him. And so it makes it, with the other characters that were there, feel less. Now, my takeaway for this is that although Stephanie Meyers is writing one of the books that is, up at the top of the list of books that people hate, she has skills. She has the ability to write well. And that's where it hurt me, I guess, is what I want to say. And I can let that go. Just don't ask me to read the next book, okay? Because I hear that Jacob gets worse as a character. But anyway, so that for me is where it came from, my dislike of it. I never really hated the book. I just didn't enjoy it. In terms of the movie, I only saw like a bit of the part where they're playing baseball, and that just was like, what on earth is this? I can't even deal with whatever is going on. I don't know how you're supposed to hit a baseball in the exact same time frame that thunder's happening. That just, how do you manage that? Unless you've got someone that knows just exactly how far away the lightning strike is. And then they count and they make it happen. That's, okay, sorry. We're not worried about that part. So for me though, if you're going to have a story that's written at a certain level with a certain perspective, I would rather see it happen in a consistent way so that you are working with equal things. So you're doing something that is, doesn't have that moment where it's like, where is the rest of this? Why isn't there more of this? In one of my other attempts to do this video, I was talking about there's an author named Virginia Woolf who wrote a bunch of very well-known books. Probably the best-known one because of the movie that came out is Orlando. But in her writings, she has a short story called Kew Gardens, and in that piece, it's really just talking about the gardens and what's in the gardens, and you dig in deep into the details of what's there, and there's like an entire section where you're just talking about a snail that's trying to make its way through the garden. And she has this ability to dig in deep to the details and the explanation of what's happening. In Mrs. Dalloway, there's a scene where you start off on a train and there's a person looking up at the clouds. And from that point, there's another person who's looking at the clouds. And you go to them for a minute, and then there's something else that connects this person to that person. You go to a number of different people, and then all of a sudden you're right back on the train with that original person in a way that builds and makes things come together in a way that is really fun. Anyway, all that to say that even if your writing isn't perfect and it isn't, in that area where we expected Stephanie Meyers to be writing about sparkly vampires, I guess, I don't know. Even if you're not completely on that level way up there, consistency, taking time to make sure that your writing follows at the same level and that you don't have, this moment that stands out and makes somebody like me go, where is this? Where's the rest of this? Because I want the rest of this. So that's my Twilight story. That's my thoughts. Thank you to Lindsey, who may or may not ever see this video. But thank you for getting me to think a little bit more about who Stephanie Meyers is and the books that she wrote.